Welcome, everyone, to episode 34. And we are closing off the year with a really special episode. I think this episode is featuring Tina Busby, and we're talking depression, and we're taking the mask and the veil of shame off of it. And I think it's a really important conversation, especially this time of year, at the end of the year. I know growing up with my dad being bipolar and something about the holidays, I don't know if it was the a past trauma. He had also had some PTSD, that there was a link to it, or if it was just, the coldness. I know with my constitution, my energetic constitution, Ayurvedically speaking, cold coming in, the vata, the wind, I was very similar to my dad. I think in looking now, very strong body, rajasic body, very fiery, muscular, and the mind going. And my father was very creative. He made, wonderful, beautiful things. He just also destroyed those things. And the winds coming in is very hard on the mental health for the very vata, creative, expansive brains. And so, in speaking to Tina, she's doing some great work through her own journey as flipping her pain with depression, having, we have to understand the science here. We are no longer led by genes. We have blown that science out of the water. In genomics and understanding, there's epigenetics. We don't have to be turned on in our genes, but we can be, and we have to be understanding of that. And that these genes hold generation on generation on generation imprinting. And it becomes so important to know our stories. I'm always speaking about her. And who is her? Her is that voice inside that you are denying. Her is that one, that inner child that gets put away in a room and maybe not, we don't speak about that. We don't talk about that. We don't do that. And maybe, what, we get to a point where there's a cathartic process through going some of this muck, going through all of this muck. And if we are not understanding the stories that came behind us, if we are blindsided by things, if we feel like we are unlovable, if we feel like we're broken, if we feel like we don't have a place. And to be perfectly honest, mental health is still this stigma, and Tina's doing a great job at, saying, what, I went through all of this and I realized something about myself. And she not only realized it through that just pain and trauma and healing herself through that, but through the feminine divine and the conversation of understanding as we get into through my bringing in that masculine aspect that we all hold as women as well. It's really a bag. It's a mix, and owning that, and owning her health, owning her mental health, and having that voice and advocacy now. So this is definitely one of those episodes that I want you to make sure that you listen to if you're struggling. If you have a sister or a brother, a conscious brother that is suffering, that is maybe being secret and embarrassed, and let him or her know. Let them know that it is time for that voice to rise. That through our understanding and taking the stigma off, we are all going to be better off for it. So this episode is one of those. And I'm just going to close out and just say thank you so much to everyone who has supported me through another year. We're close to 3,000 downloads. I think that's awesome, especially because I'm not so great at advertising it except on my Instagram. And so I really would love to change that. I want 2018 to be a place where we are going to use this as a voice and a vehicle. I've already done some recordings with some really great storytellers, with some really great women. So January is going to be great, and we're going to share it. I'm going to ask you to please, please, please do that for me and help me bring this voice out. One voice, I don't have much power. But it is a very strong voice, and it's a very powerful voice, and I've been getting wonderful feedback from you, and I'm so, so thankful. But gosh, if we could have each medicine woman that listens to this share it with the medicine women in her life. And when I say that, I don't mean you have a degree of medicine on your wall. That's the point. You have, from the layers and layers in your genes, from the innate cells within you, the medicine of nature. We women are medicine, right? We're medicine to our kids. A hug, a kiss, a supportive gesture. We have this way about us. Some of us struggle more with it. Maybe some of us are a little bit more masculinized than feminized, and sometimes some of us are way too emotional and way too feminized to be able to play the game in this more masculinized world. We need to not just be angry at what's not seeming fair to us. We need to be able to celebrate how we can come together and utilize each of what we have pulled and our strengths in it and collectively make that shift. So for all of you listening in, have a wonderful, blessed holiday. Be safe. I want to see you in 2018. I want to hear your voice. Contact me. Go on the show notes. Let me know what you thought about, if you're sitting around and in travels, getting to the families. Listen to some of the episodes you might have missed. Do some comments for me. Give me your feedback if you could. And if you could do me the favor of going on over to the iTunes and giving me a review, that would be super, because people can't see my reviews until I have that. So thank you so much for another wonderful year. Let's double that. Let's get to 6,000 downloads the end of 2018 together, because your voice matters. And when you share this with one of your sisters, you're allowing her, you're giving her the permission to find her tribe. Thank you so much, guys. And here's the wonderful 34th episode of Owning Her Health with Tina Busby now.
Welcome to this episode of Owning Her Health with your host, Dr. Lisa Holland, PT. Join Lisa as she starts the conversation on what it really takes to become a healthy, wealthy, and whole CEO of your life. Listen in to real talk by real lady leaders in all walks of life as they open up on personal health stories, wealth, career, and feminine abundant living. Learn how to grow by owning your body, expanding your mind, and aligning your soul with the purpose only you can pursue in this world. Happiness begins with owning her health right now.
Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to another episode of Owning Her Health. So you heard in the intro, I have today a local friend here in Charlotte and a wise woman of soul and spirit in her own. Tina Busby I came across probably 2 years ago, 2 or 3. We were trying to decide when we had done this wonderful women's retreat in the mountains of North Carolina together, and the time just goes so far. We think it's 2 years ago. I'm not quite sure or whatnot. So we've been sort of in the distant circles of each other, and she has a really, as I said in the intro, a great story. Really, her story, her flip of the pain is really working into the mental health conversation. So I'm so grateful to have you on, Tina. And why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us who you are and give us an idea of how you're using your personal story as a human being and as a woman to sort of flip it and become an advocate now for your health and others.
Okay, well, hey, I guess it's almost afternoon now. We were starting at 11.
We started talking like a half hour ago.
11. Let's see, about me. I feel like I have been someone who has been buried alive most of my life. I know that might sound odd, but it's part of the storyline and about where I find myself now. Very recently, being unearthed would be a great way to put it. And so part of the feeling buried underground has been related to the depression, the very heavy, heavy, heavy depression that I would feel in my body that started when I was, I was 31 when the depression started. And so I think a lot of people who have felt depression know that we feel those sensations in our body. They're not just things that's just like emotional, but they're mental and physical. And so there were so many times that I would wake up, I would lay in the bed, and I would just feel this weight, like thousands and tons of weight were holding me down. And then I started having dreams and visions of literally being buried alive and seeing myself underground, scrambling for help, trying to call out. And I just think it's a perfect symbolism for what happens with people when you feel trapped inside a part of you that is suffering and you need help, but you don't know where to find it. And you're calling out, but your cries are silent. And the silence is another factor that I feel like is part of my, I wouldn't even call it an agenda, but it's something where my heart is, because people have a tendency, I know myself, and I've known plenty of other people, family, friends, work, who hide. They are silenced and quiet about what they're feeling because they're afraid, or they feel shamed about speaking up about what they're feeling and those darker emotions and the thoughts that they have that are unpleasant, that, you know, most of us know that if they're dark thoughts and we're sad and other things too, that other people don't want to hear that. And we don't want to be stigmatized or labeled a certain way. And so I guess where that leads me now is that through my personal inner work, which my husband has termed research. What you see me do.
That is the research.
Doing inner work on my own. And that's a conversation for another time that is so beautiful and has been, I'll call it like a tool, an emotional tool that's dug me out of this very dark, heavy place. And so it's been what I call an unearthing process, because I've been buried under so much weight that I would liken to be like heavy soil, like you're buried under the ground in a, you know, sad to say, but like a casket, which I just,
it's like it's a weight.
Yes.
It's a weight on your shoulders. And you can literally see people take, you know, as somebody who uses, you know, body work or you know, the body, the somatics, to help people experience some of the mind as well as what they're experiencing normal in the body. I see that all the time. I mean, you just depressed people, you see that, you know, you just basically, what I say is, you don't see a depressed person walking like this unless they're being altered in some way. You know, pharmacologically, or, you know, by some other vice of their own in an attempt to do that. So you're talking, it's what we don't understand. And I'm going to have to bring my niece into the picture here because she's talking about the storm. She's a little goddess fire. She's making a guest appearance.
She'll probably someday, she's absorbing this wonderful talk.
She's got, she's definitely, she's got the gift. I can tell it. She's not talking too much. She's smart as a whip, and she knows, and I know it because I know how to see it in people. So that's why she wants to be part of this conversation.
That's beautiful. I love it. I'm glad she's here, and she's beautiful.
Thank you.
And smiling.
Hi, this is Reagan Alvarez.
She is a cutie.
But yeah, so, you know, I see where you're flipping that. So your personal story of coming out, what I'm hearing is your personal story of going into the underworld, going into that dark, you know, and this is the perfect time. I always tell everybody, you know, winter should be this time, like, don't burn. I just did a live stream this morning. Don't burn yourself out with all this holiday and whatever, because by the spring, you won't have used, you know, this is the time to sort of take that abundance of the fall, dig on deep, use that it's cold, go within, do that transformative work, because then you get to blossom like you did. And how are you using that today? How are you using that? So now you're out, literally. You're speaking your truth. You're speaking of your story, of your path. How are you using that for good now? How are you using that for your health and others?
As far as how I'm using it right now, and I think in context with kind of what brought us here, talking about me finding my purpose, and that being such a great part of my story. And that, okay, so I have to say two things. So part of my research over the last, and I'm going somewhere with this, but part of my research and inner work that I've done over the last 6 or 7 years, like really hardcore, which has been what, you know, has brought us to now. And the now being me being able to look at something that I just didn't understand, a personal myth. What is a personal myth? I came across that a number of years ago and did some research and reading. I was still just like, what is that? I don't get what that means. Well, in retrospect, and kind of waking up and seeing, I realized, and answer some of your questions, that this is what we're talking about. And on one level, on the modern day perspective, um, my myth that ties into what I'm doing is that my entire life, on one level or another, has been about mental health or the lack thereof. I have a long family history of mental illness, including ancestors who were institutionalized. I've had family members have negative repercussions in their life. I won't get into all that. Other ones who refused to get help and really suffered so much because they were afraid of what had happened in the past. And so that's kind of brought me to where I am in my own diagnoses. And then I have a son who's now an adult son who has a severe mental illness, who is in recovery. And that's a big part of what I just feel like I bring to the table. And just like, I want to share that with people. But the other part of my personal myth is actually tying in mythology. And so the theme of my life has been mental health my whole life, literally. But then the storyline of my personal myth is what I have been practicing through my women's wisdom ways, the last 6 or 7 years. And what I'm bringing to the table with that is realizing that we don't have to give our power away about talking about what our body and our mind body needs are. And that especially when there's new ways now of discovering how to work with our body's messages, which our body has more to say to our mind than our
Right.
mind and brain does to our body. And so that's such a big part of wellness and recovery tools that I feel like people, we have the opportunity to learn so much more about that. But that for me, I want to find a way to make it comfortable, open some doors, shine a light where the light has not shone for a really long time, in hopes that it will open up doors to people talking and expressing in a comfortable way and accepting, acknowledging when they suffer, how they hurt. Is it depression? Is it anxiety? It can be so much more than that. I mean, it can tie into, just your thought life and, outward manifestations in your relationships. When people are giving you feedback, like, hey, you know what, you're doing this and that, and this is either scary or inappropriate or whatever. And to make it okay for people to recognize when there is something quote unquote wrong, and not being afraid. I want to hopefully eradicate stigma, eradicate the shame that's involved in people having to acknowledge even to themselves that they are suffering emotionally. And so the other thing I want to say that really ties into what I feel like is my purpose because of my personal myth is that you and I both know that when there's things that are driven underground, that are avoided, neglected, they're shamed, people push them away, it gains more power. Those things have more power over us. And so I feel like the epidemic that we have with suicide in our nation, the epidemic we're having with the lack of mental health care, and more people who are suffering. And we have to find a way to not be ashamed and scared to look and address these things on an individual level so that it can improve things on the collective level. And
Yes.
that's my
Yes, sister. Yes.
that's where I am. Okay.
But because it's so true, because we don't live in a bubble of just ourselves.
No.
And that most definitely is really, in terms of my work with the feminine divine, or the divine feminine aspects of what of community and conversation and connection, and not only us with ourselves, which is deeply, rooted in what you're talking about, that interoception, that acceptance, that inner trust that I'm going to be okay, even if I do get shamed, or, I guess abandonment, shame and betrayal are the three big things that, people stops them in their track from doing some of that self-reflective work. But it's the idea of, will I trust that I then could actually find my tribe, find others out there who will support me? Because ultimately, every cell in our body, everything that we have wants to survive. And so we've gone through a whole period where we say, oh, let me just run away, let me run away, let me run away, which, suicide is what the ultimate way to run away from living life, right? Going into drugs, going into alcohol, all these addictions, even into our phones, even into, our internet, YouTubes, whatever. All of that just speaks to that loss of like you're saying, that women's wisdom ways, that connecting us with nature, and Gaia, or Mother, Earth as Goddess Mother, is real. There's a medicine there, spending time just with her, beside her, watching her, and I hear that so much from you. But that's a totally different that's a different dialogue, I think, right, from 2 decades ago. From you, if you could go back to that goddess sister, if you could go back to that young maiden with the wisdom you have now, moving from mother to matriarch, what do you think, if you could just a key couple words or something that would be really great to say back to her, and in this way share with our maiden sisters that are coming up the path behind us?
So I would say, this is what I would say to her. It would revolve around power and rights, personal power and personal rights, and that you have some, and that you have a lot of them, that especially as a young person, you might not even have a clue about what that is to begin with. But then if we live in environments that are where we're dominated, and there's nothing wrong with, rearing and teaching our precious young ones things about life. And gosh, there's so much that would be another whole conversation too.
I know, but, that's why I have so many podcasts.
But domination, that would be the key word. I feel like that when domination prohibits the use, oftentimes, of someone's personal power effectively or at all. And I also believe that with young people not knowing or not having the opportunity to practice that, to make choices for themselves, to without the fear of not just the word abandonment, but punishment, which is that kind of domination, you don't have the ability to practice it in small ways, so that when you get older, you can practice it in very healthy ways that's constructive, instead of almost explosive, in a way that it's like, so.
Yeah, no, and that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective, because I think that speaks very nicely to the masculine feminine mix.
Certain
balance, exactly.
It is.
And not balance, I say this all the time when I teach people through I have these like 5 realms of being, and purpose is one of them, physical is one of them, emotional is one of them, emotional in terms of psychosocial, and then mental being a separate aspect, and energetics. When I say balance, it's constant flow. It's like a tilt more than everything's equal.
Exactly.
I see that as, the spectrum of masculine to feminine. So we can talk about something like being the best, but we could say it maybe in the more feminine styled way as being my best.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
not so we can be dominating, let's say, or disciplined, dominating over, let's say, our mindset and mentality, and still accomplish a lot in the world without having to push everyone else down and literally in the physical form be the only top one. And I think, the feminine aspect sort of rises with her sisters to have a circle of queens as opposed to the one king. Even the one kings of the past, if you look, they had like a bunch of women because each one had their piece to support him in what he wanted to do. It made him stronger. But there's that aspect because every woman has a little piece that together we rise.
Well, something I like about what you just said too, and I feel like this is one of your gifts, is talking about the application. Really getting down to those practical steps of how do we take our energy, body, etheric, subtle, all the different things that we are. And because I like the way you are able to say, okay, this is the masculine part of our energy systems and blah, 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 blah. Here is the female aspect of our energy systems. And then how to apply those in your life while at the same time allowing the flow to happen. Where for me, and until right this minute and what you just said, and I'm like, oh my God, that's so true. I like that. I have only thought of balance in these terms spiritually, the masculine and the feminine, and how we have been as a society for quite a while, a long time, male dominated. And I say the word domination, that's kind of what we were talking about earlier. But at the same time, the characteristics of passion and drive and all the things that go along with fire and what that means in our lives is a good thing. So it's not all just domination. But then on the other side, femininity and that female energetic aspect, in being receptive and soft and creative and, so much more. And so I've only ever thought about balance like, oh, yeah, well, I don't take my fire side, the energy male side, too far and blow everything up and fight and whatever. And then the female side, oh, well, as long as I'm not too soft or blah, 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 too emotional, that everything's okay. But then that's not quite so real down to earth practical. We're talking about being grounded and being on Mother Earth and Gaia. I mean, it's like we got to keep this stuff here, practical, real, to make it work and do something good with it, constructive. Hello, that's what you're doing.
Exactly.
I love it.
We can't all just go away. Thank you, dear. Thank you so much for seeing my lights. I appreciate it. But, and thank you for putting those into words, because sometimes it's hard for me to see exactly what it is I offer. It's very hard to put that on a business plan. Let's just say.
Yes. Yes.
But, in certain aspects, like what you're saying is, it does need to, we need to own our masculine attribute, and own that we do it in a feminine styled way. It's not one or the other.
No, exactly.
I need to use both, but I'm in a feminine form and I own my feminine form, because some people are in a feminine form that don't own their feminine form, but they're in it and they're challenged and they decide how to work that out. But if I feel very much, yes, I feel like I was, born a goddess, but I live in a world that, yes, like you said, has been masculinized for so long. I need to live in this world. I mean, if I need oxygen, I need to learn how to breathe oxygen. So how do I do it, though, in a way that demonstrates what I call the Kirby Hustle? Like, I don't want to just do it the linear way. Like, that's what I was taught. That's what you were taught. Just do it this way. And it's the way that works very well. Like right now I'm sitting here and I have my niece on my lap because Mondays, I have her, but she's a good girl. So, but this is the way I'm doing it. I'm still holding attention. We're having a great conversation. She's being a good girl. She's helping out, doing her work for the tribe right now. how do I do this? Well, I need to be okay with the fact that I'm not going to hide it. This is how it worked out, and I'm still going to get this done. I could reschedule. I could act like, no, we had a conversation. I was like, no, this is the time. This is the energy. We're going to get it done. But on the other hand, she could have been having a moment or whining. I could be a bad day all of a sudden. It could be one of our days cycle-wise that we're just not feeling like we thought we would that day. And then we need to own that too. And that's actually something women aren't comfortable with doing. So it's helpful to have that voice maybe in a more linear, masculinized, go do what you got to do.
Exactly. And you know what? I think it's so important. I hear a lot, and I'll try to be succinct with this, but, talking about patriarchy and male-dominated society, and I use those words too. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I think I like to see things be addressed as maybe more of that energetic and the type of aspect that things are, the qualities and characteristics of what does the male type of energy mean, female energy mean, but it doesn't mean that it's about men or about women and they're against each other, but it's about the characteristics of, and that, okay, so I was having a conversation with somebody not too long ago, and we were talking about deities, I'll put it that way, God, deity, whatever. And I said something about, oh yeah, the divine feminine, and he was like, oh, what? No, there's only one God. There's only one God.
Right.
And so I'm like, wait a minute.
Okay, we'll call it Mary. We'll call it Mary.
Okay? I'm like, you can call it whatever you want to, but I said, we're talking about the aspects of, and the divine, the sacred is both. And if it weren't, we would not be separated into different types of gender. And I'm not saying that to disrespect any,
transgender or whatever, but that's like a flow. Like, to me, I'm like, of course, as we're becoming more conscious,
good word,
noticing that, I just think that, again, we're in a very confused time because there was just a duality and we're looking for unification. See, what we're talking is the yogic science aspect of all this. Energy is neutral and has attributes. And that's why in the yogic, a lot of people get hooked into spirituality and religion and get all confused about it. But the reality is looking at being part of this whole big energetics, like you were talking about. And in the yogic philosophies, there's all these variations of certain attributes. And they're called the deities. But really, it gives us a form. It gives us a package to understand that aspect, much like nature's given us packages, right? It's given us muscle cells, and then it's also given us skeletal bone cells, and it's given us, and each of them, even though they're both cells, they have attributes and they serve different functions. They have, like, I could use my bone as a muscle, but I'll end up getting arthritis in the joint. I need to really use my muscle as a muscle, and I shouldn't be using my muscle like a bone to hold stability, or I'm going to have a really tight, painful muscle. So it's the same way I feel like with women and men. It's like if you can do it, I can do it all very masculine, and you have a vagina. But if I, and I can do it very feminine and have a penis, but wouldn't it be nice if I just owned that I just do it the way, float a little bit more, use what I need to, and then I can identify in society who has that attribute I need right now to complete what needs to get done. And that's how we start working symbiotically. It just, if we had that mindset, more of that yogic unification, then I feel like it just would be so much easier, because then I'd say, look at the seasons. Look at what the seasons are telling me. Slow down. Be abundant. This is telling me spring. Clean up and blossom, and summer. You have some freedom and fire, and I could use that so much better. I could be so much more if I would just allow myself to listen to my body, which is in tune with the outside world. That's why I have skin.
So I want to show you something.
Okay.
Here is my candle from setting my intention this year, and it has a tuning fork on it. And
So let me describe the candle a little bit for our listeners. So it's a beautiful, she's got a white candle. And
That's a prayer candle.
And she's got a tuning fork on there. Mm-hmm.
With a beautiful purple ribbon, even though the purple doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. And what that meant for me is my intention this year, to put it a simple way, is to live in attunement, tuning into what my all blah 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 wants to say, that what it's saying to me.
I like that. What you said. You said what my all is saying to me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there you go. Perfect way to determine what is your all saying to you. And that's not even worry about, is this my masculine side, my feminine side? Is this my goddess? Is this my God? Is this, what am I hearing? And you're bringing up a good point. We need to listen.
Okay, so you want to know what I heard?
What did you hear?
Okay, so in April, this year has been a very concentrated year. I'll put it that way.
You're not alone.
It's been so wild, but good at the same time. But so in April, some things changed at my work, and not to get into what all that was, but it was related to the mental health thing. And I woke up. I kept waking up several nights in a row at about 3:30 in the morning. And this one morning, I woke up and I heard inside myself, be a voice. And I knew what it was about. At that moment, instantly, it was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't go back to sleep. So at like 7 in the morning, I made a phone call and I that's probably another conversation for
I know, we got to write these down.
Talk your ears off.
For the retreat, for the goddess retreat.
Oh, let's do it. Yeah. Yes, I love it.
But you heard of and that's very common. And I want to say that to everybody who's listening here. You have a voice. You have the gods. Guides. We talk about those. I try to give a form in terms of the Guru Goddess tribe and the maiden, the mother, and the matriarch wisdom all blending together along with all these other attributes. But you have to listen. And that beautiful time in the morning, there's a couple of really key times when you're switching energy systems around 2:00 in the morning, when our liver's replenishing around 4:00 in the morning. And then this in yogic terms, the 4 to 7 a.m. in terms of Gaia or the earth or the universe, it's like so quiet then.
That's
a lot of people wake up like you. They wake up literally, are woken up. They're woken up by this inner voice. Yes. Reagan has something to say too. They're by this inner voice that says, oh my God, finally, she's quiet enough. She's not distracted enough, that I can speak to her. She can hear me. Mm-hmm. And it's important what you do with it. So you went and you did something with it.
Which means I used my masculine side.
Exactly. You took
energy. Took action, the motivate, blah, 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 put it somewhere. But that was kind of the awakening to my purpose in being a voice for mental health causes, and particularly easing the blow would be a good way to put it. I really would love to help people ease the blow to these talks, to ease the blow of admitting when something's wrong, when someone hurts, that, let's have these conversations. And if I can find a way, if I can just contribute, even in a small way, to paving a way, being a voice, exposing my dirty secret about having bipolar disorder, which is what I have, bipolar disorder and anxiety disorder. And I have been, I promised myself as a young girl to never turn a blind eye to mental illness because of the suffering that I saw my mother go through in particular, and her refusal to seek help, even though there were so many family members that said, this is blah, 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 concern, maybe this, maybe that. She could be like her brother who had manic depressive disorder, which is now bipolar disorder. But I promised myself I'd never turn a blind eye to that. And so for that reason, I mean, I have, as if my life depended on it, since I was so young, before I even had a true diagnosis. I was just probably, yeah. So I just was just so like passionate. I mean, just scared in a way. Like my life depends on learning about this stuff and not denying it like my family did. And so, so I've had great medical intervention. I've had wonderful alternative types of healing practices to be coping mechanisms for myself. And I've learned a lot more about that this year that I intend to put into practice. But I heard a term the other day that I loved. It was called ecotherapy. So it was like on CBS Sunday Morning News and had a therapist on there talking about it. And my husband and I were like, what? We have been doing that for years and years and years and years and years.
We don't invent anything. It's all out there. Just one person is the one that decides, I'm going to be the one to talk about it more.
Yes, right? Yes. And that has been such a soothing balm. It's been like like taking I'm going to say a Xanax that you're prescribed to take, right. Not something, that's illicit.
But we have these natural things. We do. Yes. We talk all the time now about, getting more into the endocannabinoid system and the fact that we literally have a biological system to sweep us into that homeostatic point or that parasympathetic side of our nervous system so that we can hear, so that we can internally feel that interoception, so that we can appreciate what we're getting from the world around us, so that we can process what's going on inside and out of us and have that flow, have that natural flow amongst everything. So that's like awesome. So you're doing, you're definitely, flipping that pain and making it a passion project. And who knows where it goes from there.
Exactly.
So Tina, if somebody's listening in and maybe their family suffers from some of these things, or they have a child, because I think that's a big, that's a big isolating thing when you have a child who's suffering, and they'll have support groups after the fact, after the child is committed or on medications, but again, because we don't know, we don't have those conversations, we're hiding it. Like you said, it's our quote unquote dirty little secret. It's not dirty. It's maybe the world's dirty. Maybe we got to talk about that. Maybe the stuff going on out there is dirty and affecting us, to not be able to balance out our emotions and things like that. But we're not dirty. It's not,
exactly.
So where can they find you? Where's the best place to connect with you in case they just need some resources? Because now, I know that you're doing walks and things like that, raising money, kind of doing advocacy right now. How can they connect with you best?
I would say my email, which I can give you if you don't have, you have that already.
Yeah. And on maybe LinkedIn as well.
On LinkedIn and Facebook, so you can reach out to me. But for what I'm doing is, it's not a business for generating financial income. Right. But I will tell you that opening up, as hard as it's been, and one of the questions that you had on your list was vulnerability, and what's been one of the hardest lessons about befriending vulnerability. Right. And it has been that not everyone, even including those that you think would embrace your good efforts and see what you're trying to do and not necessarily applaud it, but just to support you, and that's not been the case. And I believe that part of that is that the topic of mental health and it being quote unquote dirty, only because it has been relegated to the shadows. It has been buried and made ugly and dirty, pushed it away, made dark for so long that people, it's just one way of putting it, but I'm not saying this is 100% whatever, but when people don't recognize inside themselves some type of their own suffering or whatever ties together with how revolting it may feel or be for someone to be confronted with a topic of mental health. That it's people revolt, they reject you, they push away and project onto you very ugly things. And so I knew going into being the voice that my spirit called out to me to be, that that was there was a risk, and some of Brene Brown's TED Talks. I mean, I listened to her stuff over and over and over and over for weeks before I decided to take the plunge and just go for it and fulfill my purpose, knowing that it was going to be hard in some ways. And so I haven't been surprised by it, but at the same time, I find myself sensing in my body the sickness, the pain in such a yucky way when I'm confronted with people who have rejected me and gossiped about me and made ugly comments and turn their back on me. I mean, then I think how I've tied that together, not in a wham-wham way, but reflecting that to my ancestors who were institutionalized, who were locked up and all these, locked themselves up. I mean, just the gamut, and not just my ancestors, but people throughout the ages who have suffered even worse shame and embarrassment and stigma, and allowing myself to feel that, because that too is part of, quote unquote, my story, which my story is everyone's story who has ever experienced the sting of mental health issues. And so
powerful stuff, right? Finish line.
Yay.
We could start at that. I'd love to talk the whole day, and again, we got to just make these workshops and stuff like that already. But I think you're bringing up, in closing, the real power of our own vulnerability and our own truth. But the reality is, we live in a world where not everyone wants to reflect. Like, some people literally just want to go through life seeing things the way they can deal with, and I can understand it. Everybody got to respect everybody else, but it is hard because I guess it's the person, it's the hope. Like you said, it's not that you were surprised, but you kind of always kind of have hope. It's a little different because of your relationship before, or because, of whatever, but at our roots, some people are just really scared of it. And we see the impact of fear. And again, going back where we started out, the mind and how it colors, our rationale on lots of different things, and things that were, we wouldn't normally see in ourselves, but all of a sudden we see ourselves behaving in a certain way. So it is a lesson, and it's so important. And I thank you so much for being on here with your goddess wisdom, because it is isolating, and we do need to know there's people out there who are having these conversations in our communities who understand us.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And if you don't mind me saying too, on one level, people who I think are kind of where we're talking about might be tough for them to reflect, or whatever that scenario might be for someone, is that, some of this really tough stuff, I feel like they don't know how. Many of us don't know how to reflect, how to do it in a way that's safe, in a way that isn't going to just bury you and drop you down into a pit of hell because of the deep emotion that's there. But that's what really, I feel like, for myself, and this is just coming from a feminine standpoint, but being part of a healing circle of women, and which is what you are putting together with these stories and your own way of offering virtual support with women to reflect, to tether each other, to be like, I'm there for you as you explore these inner realms of yourself that oftentimes includes pain. There's a lot of happiness there and joy and, our triumphs and those things too. But the truth be told, the healing, the medicine also comes from facing and dredging up, cleaning out, exfoliating what do you talk about when you have an arthroscopy? Our spirits have to have an arthroscopy.
Right. And like
with it shaved off.
a colonoscopy, an arthroscopy, that's true. And that's a really great way to put it. Like, you need to get cleaned out because there's just so much poop that can gather before you have a real problem.
Well, our ancestors, our feminine ancestors, which I'm just going to tell you, there were some books, I won't go on and on, but the book Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa, she talks about in this book, which I know you know what it is, but she talks about what I feel like we have been missing in our female lives, but what we are starting to piece back together are communities of women who tell their stories, not just this kind of story, but they tell their stories of, like, these are what I have done to heal. How can I support you when you are in a time of need? Even if it's right down to a woman who is on her moon cycle, and she's not feeling well. Women today, I don't feel like realize that not only can they, but that our ancestor women, they would all take care of a woman's daily duties the week or 10 days or whatever it was, while one woman was on her moon cycle so that she could rest. They honored the fact that she was tired and that she cramped.
The woman honored the fact she was on her cycle. So we have
exactly
our own actions. And like, if she stopped honoring it, which is what happened, if we stopped honoring it, then other people say, okay, because you can't force someone to receive support.
Exactly. Good point.
And they have to be receptive. So I have to finish it because we only have so much time. I do appreciate so much, Tina, for your story and your work with mental health and your energy that you put here today with us. And, definitely if anybody's listening in on the tribe and you feel like you need some support or you want to just reach out to her and just say hi and connect across the internet, either contact me, look in the show notes for her LinkedIn link, and please do reach out, because the only way we're going to have this cosmic shift is not only if we shift ourselves, but if we're visible enough where our conscious brothers can see us. We can't blame them. We can't keep blaming them for holding us down from our potential when we don't show them what our potential is. So
and if you don't mind me saying, please, women, just women, and even males too, please consider being receptive to support. Please consider the receptivity of receiving.
Be receptive. My teacher, Sri Domination, that's what he always says, be receptive. And it took me a little bit of time, but that really is the key. That's the key to all the yoga. That's the key to the unification. You can't be receptive, then you're not going to get anything. I always say that to my patients, my clients. If all of these degrees, I can't keep going to a class, and then it doesn't matter. If you're not receptive, well, thank you, Tina, so much for being on here. Thank you, everyone, for listening in to another great episode of Owning Her Health. On YouTube, we'll have some of this because we had some visual stuff with my niece and stuff like that. But thank you so much for being here, everybody on the audio, for Owning Her Health. Take care.
Thank you for listening into this episode of Owning Her Health with Dr. Lisa Holland, PT. To learn more about her personal and professional development service, visit her online at drlisahollandpt.com.